Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Baby Bunting Live Series, episode 13. I'm Elise, and tonight I'm here with Gai, who's going to be discussing wind, colic, and reflux. If anybody has any questions throughout this series, please jump into the actual comments for tonight's live series and write your question down so at the end we can actually answer that for you. So now, Gai, how did you get into wind, reflux, and colic?
Well, I've been in pharmacy my whole life, really, and I've owned pharmacies and run pharmacies, and you kind of have to develop a niche that no one else does. And through meeting a mentor of mine who actually developed a colic mix, I started to get really interested in that space, and eventually we decided that we would actually sell our community pharmacy and start a business totally devoted to colic, wind and reflux.
Well, I guess, you've made that niche for yourself there.
Yep.
So is colic a real thing, or do I just have a fussy baby?
Obviously some babies are fussier than others, just like some adults are fussier than others. But colic is certainly a real thing. The Australian Bureau of Statistics tells us that in 2018 there are roughly 315,000 babies born in Australia. Latest research results say that about 40% of them are going to develop colic, so that's about 126,000 babies. So if you've got a colicky baby, you are by no means alone, and it certainly is a real thing, and lots of babies suffer from it, and that's why I've gone into this niche, because I want to help all those mums, because anyone that's ever had a colicky baby knows how the despair that can come with a baby that cries and wriggles and squirms and grunts and just doesn't settle. There are very few perfect babies, very few, but if you have a colicky baby, you're going to know about it.
And I guess a lot of people will say, but why won't my doctor believe that there's something wrong with my baby?
Exactly, and unfortunately, a lot of health professionals just remain unconvinced of colic as a condition, and it's because there hasn't really been a lot of research into colic, and so the health professionals that rely on medical research to decide what's real and what's not feel that they need to be convinced that it is a real thing. But again, going back to the fact, if you've had a colicky baby, it's very real. And sometimes if you're not getting the answers that you want from your health professional, you do need to seek a second opinion or go and see a different kind of health professional to say, well, this is what my baby's doing, and my mum's intuition tells me that there's something wrong. And don't ever be sent home with an explanation like all babies cry, because all babies do cry, but they shouldn't cry for 20 hours a day.
And I guess it's a big thing, so how do I know what the difference is between wind, colic and reflux, and what can I do, to see those symptoms and to help them?
Wind essentially is wind in the baby's tummy, so you can hear that gurgling around in your baby's tummy. You've got burping, a lot of different burping techniques, and you're told to stop feeding halfway through and burp your baby and get rid of the excess wind, and that's one thing, and it does cause some sort of discomfort. Reflux is more about either vomiting, which sometimes causes drama with your baby. Depends, there are happy chuckers and there are very unhappy chuckers with reflux, and there's also silent reflux where the contents of the tummy come up and are gulped back down. Colic is lower down in the bowel, in the colon of the bowel, and unfortunately once wind is formed down there, there's only one way out, and though that causes a lot of discomfort and pain for a baby, hence all the wriggling and squirming and just discomfort all the time. So wind and colic are both about wind, but one's in the tummy and one's lower down, and reflux is more about the tummy itself.
So I guess, you've said that it's in those lower bowels. So what actually causes that colic in that bowel area?
Okay, well, we believe it's the result of immature gut. So when babies are born, they have virtually no digestive system that develops over time, and sometimes that takes a long time to develop, particularly after Caesar births, because during a Caesar birth there hasn't been the exchange of body fluids, so there's no seeding of the gut, and unfortunately, but necessarily, there's often antibiotics involved given to mum or baby or both, and those antibiotics tend to be fairly indiscriminate and kill off the baby's developing digestive system. And the reason that colic doesn't develop for a while is that when they're born they have tiny stomachs, the size of a grape, and normally they can handle the milk that's coming into the tummy, but as they grow and the feeds get larger in volume, that's when you tend to get those colicky symptoms.
So what then causes the reflux with these little babies?
Reflux is actually a physical condition. So where the tummy and the esophagus join, there's a sphincter, and in a large percentage of babies, that sphincter is loose, and it just allows regurgitation of the stomach contents. And because those stomach contents can be quite acidic, you'll get that sort of burning sensation like an adult with heartburn. And that's why reflux babies tend to be unsettled and fussy feeders, because they are not keeping the tummy contents in the tummy.
Okay. So I guess how long is this going to go on for, this wind and this colic and this reflux?
My answer to that question is always how long's a piece of string. Colic will usually develop, and reflux to a certain extent, somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks. You'll get sort of more intense symptoms, and babies grow out of reflux because that sphincter tightens in most babies in time. Some babies have medical conditions that sort of make that more difficult, and that can be a more long-term process. Colic will settle by itself, but there is absolutely no reason why you and your baby need to suffer through colicky pain weeks. There are things that you can do to help.
So does breastfeeding help with colic?
The latest results really don't show any difference between breastfeeding mums and bottle feeding mums and the incidence of colic. It seems to just be fairly even across the board.
So does overfeeding this little baby, cause colic?
Doesn't cause it, but it certainly exaggerates the symptoms. If you've got an immature gut and you're feeding too often or too much, you're putting even more pressure on an immature digestive system. So you're sort of just exaggerating the problem, and with colic, more and more feeding means more and more undigested milk flowing into the bowel. There you get fermenting of milk or formula, and that forms gas, and then those pockets of gas get trapped, and until they work their way out, you're going to get so many symptoms of just discomfort and a lot of pain. You know yourself, if you've got gripey pain, then it's most uncomfortable, and that's why they cry, because they're in pain. And the cry of a colicky baby is quite different to a hungry cry. mums will tell me this baby just screams, and it's not because they're hungry, it's I'm in pain and they're hunching up or they're arching their backs and they're wriggling and grunting, and they're just never peaceful. You know, babies are supposed to feed and sleep, and colicky babies grunt in their sleep or they nap.
Okay.
They nap for 40 minutes and then they're awake again, and unfortunately if the baby won't take a dummy or won't settle, that's when mums tend to overfeed.
Yep.
And just exaggerates the problem. And if babies snack or cluster feed, they're getting lots and lots and lots of that lactose-rich fore milk and not enough of the nutrient-rich hind milk. And of course, if there's any kind of lactose intolerance or anything like that, that's going to exaggerate that problem as well. So it's really difficult with very young babies not to overfeed them, because sometimes that's the only way to stop them crying.
So with, you know, when we're feeding, we're told to burp them. So will that
Yep.
burping help relieve the colic at all?
The burping will relieve air in the tummy,
Yep.
but colic is much lower down in the colon, so burping is not going to help colic. Colic isn't the result of gas bubbles moving from the tummy into the bowel. It's about that undigested milk because of the immature digestive system.
So what can we do to help relieve the pain of these little babies?
Look, there are lots and lots of things that you can do. There are physical things like bicycling legs, massaging. A lot of mums massage their babies' tummies. Colicky babies will tend to have very firm, hard tummies, and sometimes massaging can relax those muscles, but it's not sustainable long term to do these sort of physical things. Movement can help, you know, carrying your baby upright against you for comfort, but long-term colicky babies need to be given something to help with the pain, and we don't want them to be given analgesics that are just going to mask the pain. We need to treat the cause of the pain, which is that immature digestive system.
So I guess, what are the treatments out there that can help with colic? And also, you know, are things like probiotics recommended for babies?
Well, we certainly do recommend probiotics, and there are innumerable products on the market available through your local pharmacy, but not all of them are as effective as others. We do recommend a product called Chiara because there's years of research behind that product with breastfeeding mums and colicky babies, and they make one for pregnancy and breastfeeding, they make one for infants who are bottle fed. And the reason that we recommend that particular one is that it's a single strain probiotic, and it actually is the naturally occurring strain of probiotic in breast milk.
Okay.
So particularly for bottle fed babies, actually beefing up that strain of probiotic is very beneficial because they're missing out
Yep.
on that by not being breastfed. And the pregnancy and breastfeeding one can be taken by both mum and baby. And there are lots of off-the-shelf products. We don't believe they actually help with colic. They do help with tummy wind because they'll debubble the tummy and settle the tummy, but they're not designed to help with full-blown colic. So certainly you can try things like gripe water and those sort of things, but that's more about getting the burps out of the tummy.
So where can we go for help and advice?
Okay, well certainly, obviously, your babies always need to be checked out by a health professional if you think there's something wrong with them, and mum's intuitions are usually pretty accurate. So the first step would always be your GP, your maternal health nurse, your midwife, just sort of trying to get some feel for what's wrong. But we've created a company called Wilby's Wind and Colic, which is an advice line. So it's a 1300 number, 1300 79 42 32. And with that, you can get advice on, does my baby have colic? Because they'll advise you on how to tell the difference. And they'll talk about your baby's medical side, what sort of birth they had because of that high propensity for Caesar babies to develop these symptoms. And it's just nice to have an empathetic ear to talk to about what you actually can do to help your baby's pain. And that's why we created that niche in our pharmacy to help all those mums out there with crying babies. And it isn't always just crying. It is that sort of hunching up or arching the back or grunting. Most mums with colicky babies will tell you that their babies don't sleep peacefully. And they're hard to get to sleep and they don't stay asleep. And they're usually the things that will tell you that perhaps your baby has colic because your baby's in pain and discomfort.
And I think currently in this situation, that helpline number, to have someone who you can ring up now where you may not be able to get out to the doctor or you may not wish to leave the house with that newborn, there's somebody there who can help you.
Absolutely. So many mums are feeling absolutely isolated at the moment. They're not seeing their maternal and child health nurse, or they're not seeing their midwife. It's all being done over the telephone, and they're just feeling the lack of support. And, you know, they always used to say that the village raises the child. Well, if you're in COVID-19 isolation and even grandparents can't visit, it is very, very difficult if you've got a baby that isn't behaving as babies should. And most babies don't.
And I think, as you said, you know, sometimes it can be that that grandparent can come and assist you with the new child and give you that time just to take a bit of time out and relax.
And time out, or me time, for new mums is just paramount of importance because most mums of colicky babies are terribly sleep deprived. You know, they'll have a baby that hasn't slept for more than 2 hours for 3 months. And that's very, very, very debilitating, particularly if there's other children who are being homeschooled and parents who are working from home. It's just a recipe for disaster.
So I guess, is there the biggest takeout, you know, that we can give our audience, other than always, you know, reach out for that help, that you're not alone, but something else that they can take away?
Certainly, I think the basics are, you know your baby better than anybody else. So if you think there's something wrong, there usually is, and you are not alone. There are thousands of mums suffering like you are, and you don't have to. My advice is ask for help and seek it early. Don't wait until the colic's really taken hold. Start early to research what you can do to help. Even things like changing your diet, a lot of people will suggest doing that. I'm not a great believer in it because I don't think it's sustainable long term. Cutting out dairy, whether you have dairy or not, there's going to be lactose in your breast milk. Obviously, and we discussed having jalapeno peppers on your pizza is not a good idea for babies. And what they term the cruciferous vegetables, the windy vegetables like cabbage, peas, broccoli is another one, that if it creates wind in you, it's probably going to create wind in your baby. So just be very careful that you have a balanced diet. Too much caffeine is another thing that can make babies a little bit jittery, you know, Coke, coffee, all those things. Everything in moderation is usually the best way to go. But I do encourage mums always, you need help because you don't know what to do and you don't know what you don't know.
That's it. Now, do we have any questions from our audience tonight, Nat?
Firstly, Gai, can you please repeat the helpline number?
Certainly, 1300 79 42 32.
Wonderful. Now, Brooke on Instagram has asked if you could talk about the ingredients that is in Wilby's and what effect that they have on colic.
Okay. It's quite different to anything else on the market. It is an unpreserved herbal mix, so it doesn't contain sedatives and medicinals per se. There's sodium citrate, which is the natural ingredient in lemon juice. So 30 years ago, if you took your baby to the doctor with colic, he or she would tell you to feed your baby lemon juice. That debubbles the tummy and also tends to deacidify the tummy. There's dill, which is in just about every baby product that you buy. It's a natural relaxant and it gives it that licoricey, aniseedy sort of smell, and it's just a natural relaxant. But the main ingredient is a product called, really old-fashioned herb called belladonna. Don't panic, because Agatha Christie used to knock off people with belladonna berries. The berries of the belladonna plant are poisonous. We use a carefully titrated tincture of the leaves of the belladonna plant, and every single mix is carefully matched to the baby's weight.
Okay.
So that's why you have to have an individual consultation.
Great. Now, Linda on Facebook has asked if you have any recommendations on formula for windy babies.
Get asked this question a lot. There are colic formulas around. There are thickened formulas for refluxy babies to try and settle that discomfort. Sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, but one of my recommendations is don't try and change too many things at a time. So if you introduce a probiotic and you keep changing the formula and you try Wilby's mix or any of the other things that you can buy and you do it all at once, you don't know what's working. So try, and certainly probiotics definitely for colicky babies, definitely. And then the formula I don't think makes that much difference because it's undigested formula or milk flowing into the bowels. So whatever brand it is, unless your baby's lactose intolerant or something like that, then I don't think formula makes a great deal of difference.
Okay, Sarah on Instagram has asked if probiotics is recommended over buying the drops that pharmacies stock.
The one that we recommend, the Chiara, I'm satisfied with all the research behind it, that it really does help. The drops that are available that are recommended by a lot of people, I don't believe the strain of probiotic in it is nearly as beneficial because it's not the one that's naturally occurring in breast milk. And the research on that product shows that after 3 weeks, a baby cries for an hour less a day. I don't think that's a very satisfying result. So that's why we recommend the one that we do. It's the research behind it that convinces us that it's a better choice.
Okay, well, thank you, Gai, for being here tonight and for helping our audience with their questions.
My
and
pleasure.
also, give them some guidance on that wind, that colic, that reflux there, because it is a very, new time to them with a
Yep.
new child, and especially one that may be different to their first child, which was perfect in
Absolutely.
their eyes, and
Yes.
now it's, that hard settler, that crying
Yep.
there. So, we love having you here and having your knowledge and expertise. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you again soon on our next live series. And goodbye to everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.